What's up, Edgar community? Today I am here to talk to you a little bit about hashtags. Now, the reason that I wanted to do hashtags today is because it's a little known national holiday called National Superhero Day today. And I love these little holidays and they inspire me a little bit to think about things a little differently. And I was starting to think about how hashtags can sometimes be like the superheroes for your posts. Why? Because they make sure your posts get better engagement, better reach, and in front of the people who need your product or service. But the only way that hashtags can be a superhero for your posting is if you use the proper strategy on them. And obviously, if you want to be found by more people and if you want hashtags to work for your business, the first rule is you have to use them. So why should you use them is essentially the first question we're going to answer today. The reason you should use them is because so many studies show that at least one hashtag on a post increases more engagement by about 12% on sites like Twitter and sites like Instagram. The way that you want to think about hashtags, though, is that they expand your exposure to people who are not following you already. So you can kind of think about them in a way that you are going to be searchable by people who might not even know a product or service like yours exists. And you could even really end up showing up in someone's feed who doesn't exactly know how to follow you or find you on Instagram, because Instagram actually allows people to follow certain hashtags these days. So it's a pretty exciting feature to use. And we're going to dive into some strategies on how you can utilize these in three main places: in your Instagram bio, in your posts, and in your stories. So let's jump on in here. The first thing that I want you to think about is you're not picking hashtags for your business, you're picking hashtags for your audience. So this is a subtle difference, but it makes a huge strategy difference for you. For example, at Me Edgar, we're a social media automation tool, but we do not want to use the hashtag social media automation. That's not what our audience is going to be hanging out in or looking for on Instagram. What they might be looking for is, say we go ahead and hashtag something new business tips or marketing tips for small businesses. That hashtag is going to be something that people go on to Instagram to search for who could utilize a tool like ours. So the first rule of thumb here is do not hashtag your business, hashtag where your audience is going to hang out so that your hashtags are actually useful and found on your posts. And when you're thinking about how many hashtags to add to a post, Instagram does allow you to add 30 hashtags to posts in your feed. They allow you to add 10 hashtags to post in your stories, and they allow you to add a few hashtags to your bio. Definitely take advantage of all three of these places. You want to make sure you have hashtags that are audience specific in your bio, because this is actually going to be the only searchable thing, the only way you can make the keywords in your bio searchable on Instagram. So add some of them in there if you've never done that before to make sure your profile shows up under the people tab when people search for that. The other places that you're going to add hashtags is in your actual content, so on your feed and in your stories. So first and foremost, like everything we do on social media, I want you to do some research. You want to think about the keywords where your ideal audience is hanging out. You want to think about the solutions that you're providing for them, and then test out a few in the search bar, that explore feature on Instagram, to see what those hashtags are all about. So click the little icon of the magnifying glass on Instagram and type in a few hashtags that you think might work well for your community and that you think would associate well with your posts. And then you're able to kind of see what type of content is in each of these hashtags in order to see, how popular the hashtag is, what type of content is in there, and if your content fits in with that hashtag, because you want it to be relevant, of course, what the top posts are on that hashtag. What is that content that's really getting a lot of engagement with that hashtag, and could yours benefit from being within that group? So first and foremost is doing that keyword research, figuring out what and where your hashtags and your content are going to fit into the bigger puzzle. I also really want you to know that with hashtag strategies, it goes into a lot of groups of hashtags being your best friend here. So once you do a little bit of research, I recommend thinking about creating specific groups that you can start to reuse. Here at Edgar, we like to make sure you're being as efficient with your time as possible. So for me, when I'm doing hashtag groups, I just pull open my notes app on my computer and I type out 25 different hashtags. And I do that within, say, like 5 different groups. This is really important not to use the same hashtag group for each one of your posts, because this is a signal actually to Instagram that this is somewhat of a bot behavior, and your post might be flagged as spam if you do that. So make sure you're rotating through different hashtag groups there. When you're creating your groups too, even though you're allowed 30 hashtags, I always recommend that you don't use all 30, because again, this really makes it a flagging thing for Instagram, thinking that perhaps this is bot behavior. So go with that kind of 20 to 25 range as your max would be my best suggestion there. I also really love when you're doing your hashtags to make sure you're thinking about the mix of what the hashtags are going to provide for you. So when we're talking about the mix, some hashtags have over like 1 million posts associated with them. Others have fewer than 1,000 posts associated with them. And it's important that with the content you're putting out there with hashtags, that you mix some of the more popular hashtags with millions of posts down to some of them that don't have as many followers. So diversification works so well because the ones that maybe are going to work for you at the beginning and get you a lot of initial traffic are soon going to be buried under a ton of different posts because that hashtag is so popular. But the ones with fewer hashtags or fewer photos associated with that hashtag will continue to produce a lot of great people being able to find you because you'll be higher up in that relevancy. So what I suggest doing is thinking about getting 3 or 4 popular hashtags. Now, when I say popular, I mean those that are 1 million or plus, 500,000 plus images associated with that on Instagram. Get 3 or 4 of those because you know that it's going to be really relevant and a lot of people hang out there. But since it is so saturated, you do not want all of your hashtags to be in that realm. So get 3 or 4 in the popular hashtags, and the reason for this is it's going to give your photo a huge boost at the beginning. So it's going to show up right away. People see it, find it, like it. But like I was saying, it's soon going to be buried because so much content is being added to that hashtag. So next on the post, you want to have 3 to 5 moderately popular ones. So moderately popular can be those in the 50K range there. And this is really great because it keeps it more relevant for a few days. They're going to look at your content and they're going to be able to see it past just that initial one because it's not being buried as quickly. And the hashtag will continue working for searchability on Instagram way better on the kind of long tail end of these moderately popular hashtags. Next, I want you to look for 3 to 5 niche specific hashtags. So these are so targeted to your ideal audience persona that you're pretty much always going to show up in the chronological order as well as the top posts for these if you're creating really great content, of course, to go along with it. But these top performers can continue getting you traffic for days and months even if you've done this strategy right. From there, I always recommend that you do 1 to 2 brand-specific hashtags as well. So what a brand-specific hashtag is it really creates community and it gives your followers a way to see other posts that the whole community is communicating with. So when you're doing brand-specific hashtags, make sure that you make them super short and sweet, easy to remember, easy to spell, so your audience knows how to use them. It's kind of like producing word-of-mouth marketing online. You want to make sure they're a little bit uncommon so that it's not a word people use all the time, but it's a word associated only with your community. So for example, if we did a branded hashtag at Meet Edgar, we would do something like Edgar webinar or something like that so that people would be able to have a conversation on Twitter or Instagram who attended an Edgar webinar, but it's so brand specific that no one else would be using that. So again, the mix that I recommend doing is 3 or 4 super popular hashtags to get that initial boost, 3 to 5 moderately popular hashtags to get the days later kind of boost to your post, 1 to 2 really niched down hashtags to make sure that your content lives in that explore feature a little bit longer, and then 1 to 2 brand specific hashtags so you're showing your community how to create a conversation on these platforms. So that's kind of the mix you want to think about. And like I said, I could recommend making this as easy on yourself as possible and making 4 or 5 groups of these hashtags that you can just rotate through with all of your posts. Now, when you are using these groups, you want to make sure that you're not putting all of your eggs in one basket on Instagram. So every time that you rotate through with them, you want to pay attention to which group is doing the best. And you want to make sure that these aren't just static groups you're always using, but you're continuing to iterate on them. I always get the question as well of where should I put these groups of hashtags? A lot of people get confused whether you're supposed to put it in the actual Okay, sorry, I think my internet cut out. I think we're back. Thanks for your patience there. The reason that I suggest putting it in the actual post, if you have a lot of popular hashtags, is because you want to make sure that these are seen right away. Again, if you're using hashtags that have millions of people commenting or millions of people using them, it's going to get buried really quickly. And it's likely even that couple of second period between you copying it from your post into your first comment will lose you some reach there. If you don't want the actual hashtags in the post for an aesthetic reason, go ahead and use it in the comments, but this is purely preference. There's no right answer there. So once you post it, you want to make sure that you're really utilizing the Instagram algorithm to your favor. This means that you want to make sure that your content and your hashtags align with the photo. One of the reasons that I see people get really frustrated with hashtags is because they feel like they're not getting a really great return on them. But when you look at the content that you're posting your hashtags with, oftentimes you're starting to see that perhaps it's a photo of just, your dog, and you're talking about how you're working from home with your dog, and you're talking about some remote work tips that are really relevant to a small business. You might want to hashtag that small business or work from home tips. However, when you think about when people are searching hashtags, they don't see your description, right? They only see your photo. So when they're scrolling through that hashtag and they just see a photo of your dog, it's not going to create that really great relevancy of people being able to understand where that hashtag lives. So you want to make sure when you're doing this that the hashtags match up with the photo just as much as the description, because when you go to the Explore feature and whip out your phone and try this right now, you'll notice you only see the photo. This is also one of the reasons that quotes and kind of word images on Instagram work really well in conjunction with hashtags, because when people are able to see those words, they're able to then know if you're the right brand for them to want to interact with. So if you're someone who hasn't tried putting a quote or putting a thought leadership tip on a beautiful background and uploading that to Instagram with a bunch of hashtags, these can be some of the best brand awareness posts in utilizing these with hashtags, because people are able to see right away what you're all about, and they don't have to guess just from like a personal photo that you might be posting. We love recommending you post your face and you post your personal photos as well to give that behind the scenes content and to give that facial recognition. But hashtags do work best when they're aligned with the photo and not just the description there. So something to keep in mind. I always love to recommend utilizing hashtags in your stories. So Instagram stories are interesting because there's two ways you can use hashtags. You can use the sticker feature or you can use the text box feature. So if you use the sticker feature on Instagram, you're limited to one hashtag. It's great to use, if you go to your stickers, you click on it, it'll populate with the hashtag right away. Get one to use there. With the text box feature, now this is a tricky one. You want to make sure if you're just adding text to an Instagram story and you're hashtagging it, you need to make sure that the hashtag shows as underlined, because that's the only way you know that it's been established, as well as the fact that they'll allow you to add 10 hashtags, but only 3 of those hashtags are actually being categorized by the Instagram algorithm. So you want to make sure that you are really digging into the top 3 you're using there. If you want to use the others just for some fun little, addition of language, that's totally fine. They'll let you add 10, but only 3 are being categorized. Now, the mix that you want to do in Instagram stories is a little bit different than your feed because stories only last for 24 hours. So you want to make sure in your stories hashtags that you're utilizing a hashtag that has a huge audience because you want to make sure that you're being found right away. Whereas if you use a really niche specific hashtag within that 24-hour period, not a lot of people might be searching for that niche hashtag, right? So look for those bigger word hashtags and those bigger volume of follower hashtags for your Instagram stories. Also keep in mind, Instagram stories are interesting because the way the hashtags are categorized go into the actual receivers, the viewer of these stories, what they've shown the Instagram algorithm, what they've shown they're interested in. So you could hashtag something and my Instagram and your Instagram would show me 2 different stories and 2 different popular posts on the Explore feature because the algorithm is trying to serve up content that is more relevant for what they know I like to interact with. So keeping your audience persona in mind and keeping in mind what they interact with quite often is really important when you're doing those hashtag strategies as well. All right, so also one more thing that I like to warn people against within your Instagram stories that's become kind of popular is minimizing your hashtags and color matching your hashtags. So a lot of the time we don't want our stories to be super populated with text. So there's this trend going around that you'll just pinch that hashtag so it's super small, or you'll match it with a background color so people can't see it. However, you want to make sure you're not doing this because Instagram is smart, y'all. They have caught on to this practice and they're actually not categorizing hashtags that you minimize and people can't see. So make sure you leave them big enough that people can see and you're not matching them with an exact color in the background. And if your hashtag is going to be something that you want to have that consistency in and that brand awareness in, your stories are also a great place to share your brand specific hashtag and give your followers a CTA, a call to action, to go ahead and use it in their own stories. This again is a great way to create community and brand awareness and word of mouth marketing to get your brand in front of their followers' eyes. All right. So that's kind of the way that we suggest strategizing hashtags, of doing groups, making sure you're diversifying them, and making sure you're utilizing them in your bio, your feed, and your stories so they can be the superhero for you and gain you more attention. So let me know what hashtag tips really work for you, what you guys are finding is the content that works best with hashtags, and we are so excited to see your success and your brand is growing. I'll see you again tomorrow, guys, and have a great night.